Yes, you'll go live or recording. I think we'll get to. Sorry.
Good afternoon. Wednesday. We're here for the meeting the board yeah. We have 2 cases on today. After a couple of months rescheduled. So we're going to lost one. The project number 00522, application for Marriott 0139. Property address is 80 New Scotland Avenue, applicant is Saxon Saints Court. The proposal is to erect a new 98.54 square foot full sign at Albany Law School, where the maximum allowed is 32 square feet.
All right, so each applicant will come up and present their case. Each applicant has made their own presentation and sent it to staff. So for 80 New Scotland, you could come up.
Hi, I'm Jack Conn, representing Saxon Signs. And I guess the whole deal is the college wanted something large enough to be seen. There's a lot of vegetation from this building to be seen from Notre Dame Drive. And evidently, Mr. Swire had left the school a great sum of money, and they thought this would be a nice recognition for them. That's what we're here for.
Can you go through the 5 questions? So whether an undesirable change will be produced in the character of the neighborhood or detriment to nearby properties will be created by granting the area variance.
No, I can't see where it would. It actually faces a parking lot and another building which is occupied by all the college farms. There is no residential homes there. It's all basically an extended campus of the 2 schools.
It's part of the list, or it's part of the bigger event, actually. Right.
I don't know. You have Albany Med, and you have the VA. All of the individual houses that were along Academy that way are now non-residential. I think they're all lost.
Are there other large signs? You mentioned a couple of other big buildings.
Yeah, Albany Med has several. The hotel has large signs. I'm not sure. I know that the school of pharmacy has many signs around campus. I'm trying to think if there's anything really huge, very large scale with theirs. I don't believe so. Probably something come up within 90 square feet or something. It seems they do lettering, spread the lettering. That should be 1 square.
I'm happy to ask the question either now or it's more appropriate at the end of the 5 factors. I just was wondering, is there What is the size of this proposed sign in comparison to the James Fargo pavilion signs on the strong side?
The James Barber.
Pavilion signs, they're on Albany Med.
I do not know. You take a vote on that?
I'm wondering that because it could be, perceived as being whether or not that would kind of be considered the character of the neighborhood. Other.
I know there's some large signs over there. We have done quite a few over the last few years with all the building and renaming of buildings over there.
The new one was for was 90 some square feet.
Yeah.
That pulled up.
93.2 square feet, the area variance granted in September. Right, now can you go over alternatives considered, please?
Well, I mean, I guess we can make it small. You know, it's up on the second floor. And 32 square feet up at that height would be really not much impact. It's actually above the second floor. Just below the third floor.
So why, why the 99.54 square foot, like why, I mean.
Well, they're
I
actually.
made a statement, I guess, but I would consider that a substantial deviance from the, allowed 32 square feet. So, in the goal of trying to really, we're only allowed to grant the smallest variance possible. We have a responsibility to minimize the variances to the code. We can't, we can't come up with why this could be approved and tell us why we should, why this why it's such a large sign point.
Well, really.
Why not 50 square
Right,
foot or 40 square foot,
Well, if you actually did the square footage of the letters, it's on a back. Does anybody have the drawing? There.
This was the drawing provided in the application.
See, the letters are only 14 inches high. The backer panel that it goes on, because we didn't want to drill all those holes into their nice building. If the square footage was taken on just the letters, it'd be just a little over 40 square, 40.4. But the calculations were taken with the backer panel on there, which is that black line around it, which we wanted to have some reflective. The letters are a dark color, so that it would be seen during the day and at night. As you can see, it's a halo, so we didn't want to have it penetrating through the faces to cause anybody any concern because of bright illumination. So we did the halo. I think 40, if you were just to do the rectangle with the 40.44, I didn't think that was too much to ask.
Can you comment on the appearance of that back plate? That you told us that if the lettering were to be put into that building directly, it would be substantially smaller area, but I'm curious about that back panel. Like, is it this bright white? Is it painted to match the building? Like, is there something that would sort of minimize the appearance?
It would, we do the color of the white color of the building, so it would tie in with the building. Here's the color. White color, yeah.
Is there any reason that, like, is this building historic? Is there some reason that there's a particular aversion to putting those letters directly into the structure itself?
Well, just just two things, the cost that it would be for the install and just the damage it would do to the building. Every letter would have 3 to 4 studs to be put into that building, into the brick. Whereas if you put them on the panel backer, just good luck. If they're all attached to the backer, you want up in 2 pieces.
So what you would need 2 or 4 screws total? Put to the backer, and so large.
They actually, I believe it was 6. 3 on top, 3 on the bottom. As opposed to.
Is it correct that this sign would be put on a building that's not in a on a fully public street? This is within the campus, correct?
Yes, and it's a one-way. It leads up to Albany College of Pharmacy, and then goes into
How much of an issue is wayfinding in that area?
I don't think it's a real issue. We've done over the years those maroon to get people around. You find that a lot there isn't much foot traffic really. People are either know where they're going or they're going either to Albany Law or they're going to Albany College of Pharmacy. That it's tough to even see that building is the building 2000, which they've now renamed the Swire building. And that was one of the hopes that they'd be able to see that building when they were driving up to or past the building.
So this street here, this is Holland.
No, that's Notre Dame, which is right, it's off now.
It's still considered part of the same parcel. It goes by like an AKA to Notre Dame, but it's still part of 80 New Scotland.
Yeah, see the parking lot, that's what it faces, that's what the sign faces.
Would the Edspire sign, would that lettering and the sign itself be larger than the Albany Law School lettering on the like threshold underneath the 2000 building?
The lettering of that was. They are around 6 inches. And that is, well, of course, lower here. It's right up over the entrance to the building all the way to the left entrance door.
So I can say that.
It is much lower.
Mhm.
And then we had an area to put that in above on the face,
And what was the size?
about 6 inch. And it was stacked, it was 2 line. There was one there previous also. And they wanted to update the other one. I have a drawing of that.
So it's like twice taller. The lettering.
Yes, and 3 times.
The lettering
Lower
is
to
way
the
smaller,
ground.
but it's 2 lines, so potentially the square foot is much larger, but, or it's the same.
And that also a battery. It's 20-inch high battery.
Hard to understand. So I think for myself, can you just go back to alternatives considered?
Sure.
Um, well, and so it sounds to me like you're saying that, the alternative considered, was just putting individual letters. Of a no size, just not doing a factor of individual letters. The reason they want to do that is that, this is gonna, be more visible.
Right.
And that it's gonna be less cumbersome financially and on the building, controlling less schools, et cetera.
Right.
Okay, can you go over whether the requested area variance is substantial?
If it's substantial,
Right, like is this a substantial deviation from the code?
I don't know if I can really accurately answer.
Okay. We can move on to whether the proposed variance will have an adverse effect or impact on the physical or environmental conditions in the neighborhood or district.
No,
You said it's back to that thing, so I think.
that should show you to the right, when you show the halo.
So just for the each letter.
It's just a glow around the letters that bounces off the right, that back.
In order to get it electrified, is there any reason that there and not, like, vertical or sensory coordinated?
Oh,
Was electrical not?
well, it was, that it was the, also easier for them to get the electric where it was placed. They had electric up in the ceiling between the two floors. That's where it tied in.
All right, and lastly, whether the difficulty was self-created.
Well, I guess it was. Yeah.
I would just like to add, there was a public comment against this area variance. I can pull up the email if you'd like me to, if you'd like to look at it in depth.
Well, sure, there's always.
I don't think.
Okay. Okay. If anybody does, take action, just remember this is unlisted or seeker, so there has to be a negative declaration.
I'll make a motion for a negative declaration of receiver.
Second.
Oh, yeah, we're doing.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Negative declaration.
I guess just for the record, so we've said, the applicant has stated it is a self-created difficulty. There's no comment about whether or not it was substantial, that there were not any alternatives considered. These are 3 of the 5 balancing factors. Am I understand that correctly?
My reading of the case, that it's a self-created difficulty with no impact on the environment. It's a substantial variance, 200% larger than 32 square feet. Although it wasn't detailed in the application, I we see that a little bit of alternatives consideration, just now. Yeah, I don't know that they were about minimizing the variance so much. I think that's. But it's a very long name.
Right.
And I, there's a concern of this, but, but the goal, I can understand that there's only so many this personally. It's just character of the neighborhood. We talked about that, and although it's the bigger residential neighborhood, it's part of the campus and how it's bad. Yeah.
Oh, I just echo that, given that it's a 280% larger, like, it's a substantial variance, and I'm a little surprised, I think, that there weren't alternatives considered, like like an alternative, for example, and it's not our job to recommend alternatives, but even just like what's like a sign on the ground, the name of it seems like, why was that not an acceptable way to, pay tribute to this donation? I would just like to see, and that's not so you can't come back with alternatives explaining why that's acceptable or not acceptable, but just given the substantiality of the variance and that no alternatives were presented, that concern.
We're to make a motion. Or I think Lori wants to make the motion to hold its gates to learn more about alternatives. To see if Alaska wants to come back with the option. I guess that would be an option. Right?
It would be an option.
I think that would be in the best interest of the law school to go back and brainstorm and consider other alternatives and come back and see if there's a better chance of getting this variance approved. But in its current state, it's unlikely to get approved. So I move, should I make a motion?
Yeah.
I move that we hold this case. I'm not sure what the terminology is, so feel free to edit it at some point. I move that we hold this application and give Albany Law the option of editing it for our review at a later date.
I'll second the motion.
I would just add, if there's anything specifically that you're looking for, I suggest putting that in the motion.
And Albany Law could specifically address alternatives considered,
Minimizing the variance.
minimizing the variance.
Yeah, I think you could get some additional information on the impact on the environment that Martha touched on. This is a safety issue for people trying to find this building or things like that. I think are important. More information than not usually serves applicants.
Okay, so we have a motion, we have a second. Go.
I, yeah.
Yeah.
Adriana, yeah. So I guess we're not making a decision so that we're basically, because we're choosing not to deny the variance at this point, that you can have a position in with the client if they want to consider either the sign that meets the requirements of the code or coming back with, further information regarding alternatives, potentially a smaller sign, other options, that may still need a variance, but not as substantial.
Yeah, I mean, the 208% does look back because of the backer, but the actual sign that is on that building with the letters is only 40 feet. So,
And is that stated anywhere in this application? Because that would be information that would be worth looking at.
I'm at a little disadvantage here. I was last minute at this meeting, and I just probably assessed. We usually do this the last variance. I think it was about 32 years ago. So.
And I think that we also potentially, if there's anyone online or the board that wanted to say anything on this case.
There's no one online. No one online.
So if all they love to look at just the background issue, I think the substantiality is a major issue. So going back and looking at the background and seeing what could possibly be done with that, what alternatives can you consider with respect to that to minimize the variance might be helpful for you all.
So with that, we've made a motion. So I think,
Staff can help to summarize that for the client. Figure out what the next steps are.
As the front of I actually went to the sign on Albany. So like the sign is up.
that's a good point. I don't think I can do that.
I didn't know that. I knew there was a program, but I didn't know it was a.
There's no permit, but that's a separate issue. Yeah, is Mr. Katz still on working on the sign?
Yes, he's on vacation.
Okay. All right, well, we'll, as staff will coordinate with him, anyone else to provide the information that the board is asking for.
We'd like some cheaper.
Yeah.
Okay.
Were they impressed?
No problem.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Oh, yeah. So next we have project number 00527, right? Yeah.
Yes. Yep.
Applications for area variance 0146 and 0147, property address is 705 Broadway. It's Hyatt Place. Proposal is to construct 245.95 square feet wall signs for the Hyatt Place Hotel.
Oh, sorry.
Hi. Okay. Yeah. And so as you got to see, yeah, the applicants present the case.
I got it.
For the record, then, we get to ask questions later.
Right.
Yeah, during or at the end and.
Okay. I think, if you wouldn't mind, I'd like to go through all the slides and then, because I'm pretty sure that you'll ask a question that I probably address in a later slide. So to avoid that, I think we should go through all the slides and then we go backwards and look at specific things if you have a specific question.
Perfect, thank you.
So this is the location. It's basically the building that is under construction on Montgomery, in between the Albany Pump Station and the Progressive Insurance Building. I don't know if, so it's that nav exit off of I-787. So it's a Hyatt Place Hotel. And that, kind of sat half finished through most of COVID. And now we are hoping to finish it in July for an opening, hotel opening at the end of August. The district, it's in the mixed use downtown district, which is what I outlined there. So the overall site, that's 705 Broadway, that also has the multifamily building on it. Well, proposed building, it's an empty vacant site right now. But in blue is the parcel where the hotel sits. But the overall parcel, and that was confusing because this project has always been 705 Broadway, but now the hotel is 82 Montgomery. So I'm trying to distinguish that now so that it doesn't get confusing. So you can go to the next slide. So the green, that is the multifamily parcel, and the red is the hotel parcel. The main entrance of the hotel faces Montgomery Street. But it's because of the grade change, you enter in, and then the main lobby is actually on the second floor. So we have something that is known as a jump lobby. You'll see it in New York City a lot, where you kind of enter at the street level, but then the main hotel lobby is up floor. So that's the case on the ground floor. So we have, you pull in and there's the canopy and
you go up the elevator to check in. And on this ground floor, there's some meeting spaces. There's a lot of back of house, the laundry, the employee entry, mechanical rooms. But there's also the fitness center and 2 small meeting rooms on this level. You can go to the next slide. So that's kind of a better picture. What I was trying to show, and I have different photographs throughout the presentation, I was trying to show the size of the lettering on the pump station, the size of the lettering on Progressive, which in both cases, it's not like I could get up there and actually measure it, but it looks to be about 3 feet tall, those letters. Like if I was kind of counting bricks on the Progressive thing, and then we did math, high level math. So yeah, you're welcome. You can go to the next slide. I was just, kind of further, these are taken from the Skyway. So the Skyway goes right by, the Skyway has a great view. That's obviously the federal building right behind it on Broadway. You can go to the next slide. I was just trying to show different photographs. This is the building as it faces Broadway. So you see that ramp, that's a terrace, that there'll be a terrace up on the 2nd floor off of the main check-in bar cafe area and dining area. But then you can go down the ramp and get in between like the Albany distillery and the hotel to go to the Quackenbush garage. And this picture stupidly doesn't show on that corner, there's another Progressive sign that's identical to the one on the other side. Go to the next slide. This is a view from looking at the corner of Montgomery and Spencer. So it's a rendering. So you see what would be the multifamily behind it. That's obviously not there right now. Most importantly, what I'm trying to show is that the lettering is actually affixed to the architecture of the building, which yes, is kind of a pain because you put a lot of holes in the building, but the sign is much more integrated and becomes more part of the architecture of the building. And what we were trying to do, because there's that big vertical architectural element, we're really trying to kind of size the logo and then the lettering similar to the window opening. So the scale of it makes sense, and that we're using the sign as an architectural feature to break up that vertical element. So that was the intention of why we sized it. Well, later on, you'll see there are other reasons why we sized it the way we sized it, but from an architectural standpoint, that's why I think the sign works. You can go to the next slide. So this was the section of the ordinance that was part of the requirement. I don't think you need to see this really, but this is the section of the ordinance. You can go to the next one. That basically says, so these are the rules for mixed use downtown, 32 square feet for each elevation. And that's just your own ordinance kind of recited back here. So basically this first question is, will it change the character of the neighborhood? The character of the neighborhood, in my view, already has big lit signs. So I'm sorry. Sorry, everybody. Anyone who's watching online, that was probably loud. So the Progressive sign is a big lit up sign. Obviously, Albany Pump Station, even like the numbers on buildings. Like, so as you're on 787, these are really big signs. On the back side, you have, this is facing Broadway because we're asking for 2 variances, one for the east elevation and one for the west elevation. So the east elevation faces 787, the west elevation faces the neighborhood. And that is basically the federal building and then the Palace Theater behind it. So, I mean, there's nothing small in scale right there. I mean, these are all large buildings. There aren't single family homes within 2 blocks in any direction. Then of course the scale of the neighborhood 100% changes as soon as you hit the hill and go up Clinton. The scale of the neighborhood definitely changes. But this is also, so these are 57 feet above Montgomery Street, 44 feet above Broadway, basically, is where these signs sit. Go to the next slide. So there's Cal Cedar. Obviously, that's a big, huge sign, and that like scrolls. This is at the end of the Quackenbush pedestrian zone, like opposite the entrance to the Albany pump station. And I only took this one picture because it had like letters and stuff, but I'm sure you're aware that underneath there are huge murals, like the whole way, everywhere. There are big, huge murals that are of this kind of scale. I mean, just a really big scale. The murals on the side of the Quackenbush Garage. I mean, I just think this whole neighborhood, the scale of everything is big as far as lettering and signage goes. I just want to give you better pictures of their signs, our two neighbors. That's showing you same thing from the other side, just so you can see in context what we're talking about. So our sign would be up on the 7th and the 6th floor. Go to the next one. So this, it kind of explains what I just said earlier about the logo and choosing that vertical. We're trying to correspond with the window openings, and then the lettering kind of corresponds with the size of the metal panels in that section. And so, I mean, like, so it's very well integrated with the scale, not only of the building, but then the scale of the elements that make up the building. So whether it's the jointing on the metal panels, the window openings, I did, as far as an alternative, one alternative would be to, but I don't know if this helps because they're two separate variances. So you get one sign for the 2 street elevations. So we have one on Broadway and one on Montgomery. We obviously care a lot more about the one on Montgomery because that's the one that faces 787. That's the one that everybody sees. We're not as convinced about the one on Broadway, how many people actually even would get an opportunity to see that one. So if that were ever, if that helped to say, oh, we'll just put it on, you know, we'll just put one instead of 2, that's something that we would be open to if that, you know, helped ease the variance. But like I said, I don't know if that counts because it's 2 variances. So in the application, I realized I screwed up the dimensions here. So those are the correct dimensions. The 143 by 72. And so I had much smaller dimensions. But these are more accurate. So I apologize for that. But so that's the Montgomery East elevation. And then if you go to the next slide, it's basically the same. It's kind of the same with the exception of the terrace. The signage and that big vertical element are the same. The row of windows, it's the same. So in terms of whether it's substantial, I tried to say 2 things here. So I think a 32 square foot sign on those buildings as you go up Clinton, on all these storefronts, like 3-story buildings. And I think I have a picture later on where I showed that, you know, 32 square feet on a building like that, I get, but 32 square feet on this massive face is a different story. Can you go back 1 slide?
Sure.
So I was trying to, like, if you do the overall calculation of that space, it's 143 feet long by 72 feet tall. That signage, that 45 square foot sign, a 32 square foot sign is 0.31% of that elevation. So less than 0.5%. What we're asking for is still less than 0.5% in terms of coverage. You know, like it's just such a monster face that so I don't think it's substantial for that reason, because you have this huge building with a huge face, and that's what the next slide I tried to show. If you put a 32 square foot sign, well, first of all, there's no relationship to all the architecture, like the windows and the lines, you know, and it just, I don't know. I mean, I guess anyone could disagree, but I look at the one on the right and it looks like just like a little fly landed on it. It's not connected to the building in the same kind of way. And at that height, I mean, those letters are tiny. I don't even think, at least the letters get so small that to get the electric and to get every letter mounted, I mean, we're physically even going to be running out of space to make that work. So that was, you can go to the next one. Will it have an adverse effect or impact on the physical or environmental conditions in the neighborhood or district? Once again, I tried to show that, you know, it really is in keeping with the character of that neighborhood. So I really don't think it will have an adverse effect. If anything, it just kind of makes it fit in better, not worse. And then in terms of, I mean, there's no impact on drainage, traffic circulation, dust, noise. I was just being specific there to answer your question. Next slide. So was it self-created? I mean, I guess putting us, you could argue that it's self-created, but so this is a Hyatt Place hotel. These are franchises. It's no different than like, you know, a McDonald's or a Burger King. And if you do you have to, you're not allowed to build a McDonald's and not put the McDonald's sign up. And you're also not allowed to build a McDonald's and like change the arches and, you know, change the proportion of them or anything like that. So it's just very, very prescribed. So Hyatt Place Hotel, this is their latest prototype for the Hyatt Place that we're building here. So it's different than all the ones around. It's like the newest prototype. And if you go to the next slide, so with that, there are all these really specific, they prescribe everything. The flooring, the materials, exactly the layouts of all the rooms, like it is a Hyatt Place Hotel. People need to know that's what it is. So they do give you these different options for wall signage. So if you go to the next slide, this was brand option 1. Like I didn't touch this. This is what I got and we got to pick. So I can't see it from here, but if you look at like that area on this one, the smallest possible one is like 59 square feet on that one. So of all of their options in Model 1, the smallest one is bigger than what we're proposing. And that's a horizontal version. Architecturally, we didn't really like it for the building, so we didn't choose this one. If you go to brand option number 2, this is the logos up. It's still kind of horizontal, but once again, I mean, I don't really understand why they highlighted the ones they highlighted, but you can choose any of those. So I didn't do that highlighting with the arrow, but if you look, that one's 104, my eyes aren't great, 104 square feet. And then the smaller one's like 97. So then if you go to the next one, this is more similar to what we did, but same thing. So these are the options that they're basically allowing. And then the last one is this is our design. And this is like how we sized it and what we did it within those constraints. So we have to work within their parameters. So I just wasn't sure how to answer that question. So, I mean, I guess, did it have to be a Hyatt Place? No, but I mean, every single one, if you look at every single hotel downtown, like if you look at Hampton, if you look at the Renaissance, the Holiday Inn, I mean, they all have these huge signs, like none of them are 32 square feet. And I guess maybe they all happened before 32 square feet, keep the number. I don't know. I can't comment on that. I don't know how long 32 square feet has been the number. But I do find it, I think 32 square feet, regardless of building size or circumstance, is tricky. I don't know how you make that work in every instance. I think it's hard. And I think that's my last slide.
And specifically, what is your role at Hyatt?
I'm with the developer. I'm not with Hyatt. I'm with the developer. So like I said, these are franchises. So you have most select service hotels. I mean, every once in a while, the corporation like Hilton or Hyatt, they'll own. They do own some of the select service, and by select service, it's like not the full service hotels. So, you know, down in New York City, like the Hyatt on Avenue of the Americas, that's a corporate Hyatt, and a lot of the big full service Hyatts are corporately owned. But then there are other brands, especially the select service kind of more specific brands, those tend to be the majority of franchisees. And so they're local developers and owners, and then that operate under the brand standards, following the brand standards.
So I want to make sure I just understand this component. So you walked us through, I recognize that being that it is a recognized name and brand, there are certain templates you have to follow, and other
Yes.
templates you found a way in this format to reduce it
Yes.
as much as possible,
Yes,
given the constraints you have to work with by virtue of the brand.
correct. That's what I'm trying to say. But I mean, maybe it wasn't very.
I think it's the most I think I've ever done in my life, so.
That's exactly what I'm trying to say. Thank you.
To confirm, the circles are part of the sign, right?
The circles are the logo, and for a really long time, I didn't realize that. But so at night, if you look at the Hyatt Place, the night version, so that square around it, that's just the plywood backing. That rendering is what it looks like. But so at night, notice that the two middle ones are black. So it's an H. It's an H, and took me a long time to realize that that's what it was. In the daytime, it looks like a pattern. But when it's lit, the two middle ones, the ones that are colored black, don't get lit. There's no light behind them. So at night, the H reads very clearly. In the day, I don't see the H that strong in myself. But H for Hyatt, yes, it's part of the logo. It's the Hyatt Place logo specifically. It's not the Hyatt logo, it's the Hyatt Place. They have Hyatt House, they have, you know, there are a bunch of Hyatt products, Hyatt Centric.
Are you an architect or?
I do happen to be an architect. I'm not the architect, I'm not the person who stamps these drawings. We work with other architects, but yes, I do happen to be an architect.
I can tell.
Amanda, can you go like also just like slow down a little bit past that, but like past the self created. It's like a photo where you can see yeah, this is fine.
Yeah.
Was there, can you talk a little bit about sort of, and I understand the franchise part, but what about a sign at the bottom, right above the entrance, like rated bar, right? So like wait,
Right, on top of the canopy, on top of the canopy. Well, so we're really we really want it to be seen from 787, and that below the canopy, you would never see if you were driving 787. And so like, if we can have one sign, we definitely want it up high. Just because it's obviously very beneficial for people driving by to see it and know that there's homes out there and that it's a Hyatt Place. I mean, but with the way the overpasses are down below, I mean, only pedestrians or people going and parking at the front, like only those people would really see that sign. I don't think you would see it because it's really, you know, that angle, you'd never see it.
And just for consistency in questions, so how large is this? Well, we know how it's 45.95 square feet. How large are the progressive sign and the 677 that building?
So you mean in total square footage? I don't know. I honestly don't know. I was just like looking at the overall size of the lettering, which is like 3 feet. And so I tried to, our Hyatt is, our Hyatt is about the same size as those letters. The place gets smaller. Our place letters are quite a bit smaller than those letters, because these letters are different sizes. So I was just trying to show that the scale of the lettering was about the same, but in terms of total square footage, I did not, I don't know how I could calculate that accurately.
Thank you.
I think the echo are just consistent in questions. Am I correct on the math that the percentage of substantiality on this would be up to 35.7%?
Yeah.
Larger.
32 to 45.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not great at mental math, but
I
that
didn't
feels
use
right.
calculator.
That feels right. Yeah. Yes. And that of course includes, I mean, that's part of it. And so, like I said, there are two applications. So this happens on the Montgomery Street side and on the and did I not include the Albany names picture? I was just trying to, so, I mean, I think, you know, on a 3-story building that's 30 feet with a 20-foot storefront, like, sure, I think 32 square feet is appropriate there. Just don't know that you can apply that same standard to this. Thank you. You can.
Any other questions?
As a comment, I appreciate how thorough this application and presentation is.
Thank you.
No one online, public comment.
No.
We cannot hear the public comment.
Yeah, to say something that's right.
Support your science.
He's part of our project team, so.
We did all the original surveys and stuff, the site one. We were here when the site thing happened. But not for the
100 years ago.
So I'd like to make a motion. Are we gonna separate it for the two separate?
Yep, separate for the two, and then you need a negative declaration.
Yeah, that's the motion.
The-
Yeah, that's the motion I'm gonna make. But thank you. I move for a negative declaration under secret.
I'll second. So roll call, Serena.
Okay.
No, sorry. Is that page?
Yeah.
After, yeah.
And that's for area variance 0146, if I didn't say that. 146.
So for area variance 137, I'd like to make a motion for a negative declaration under secret.
Second. Page.
Yes.
Monica? Yeah.
Serena, yay.
Adriana, yay. That's two negative declarations for each of the variances. Motions of.
I move that we approve area variance 146 to allow for a 45.95 square foot sign where the maximum permitted is 32 square feet.
Second.
Yes.
Yes. Adriana, yay. That's 4 yays, so the area variance 146 is granted. Motion.
I'll make a motion that we approve area variance 147 to allow for a 45.95 square foot sign where the maximum is 32 square feet.
Second. Okay. Serena,
Yay.
Brenda, yes.
Yes.
Yes. That's fancy, sorry, the variance. Granted, and I will say my final application. Yeah. Shall we invite you to sign on that? No, it's not.
Are you a lawyer too? Are you a lawyer? Okay.
It's really great that we-
Okay. What was the gentleman? I'm sorry.
That's the thing for the other, the next application.
Okay, he's,
You can just do one.
he'll be joining Dan. Oh, did he just have a few questions or?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Doesn't matter.
Who is, do you know how he represents Destination Nissan? Cause I think Dan's doing this song. Okay. Okay. Is he waiting to come in? Oh, okay, okay. All right, sounds good. Okay, all right, sounds good. All right, thank you.
Trying to hire her, but she wasn't wanted.
Okay, so project number 531, there is 1, 2, 6, there. So, 6 variances, 1.2, 1.6, 1.57, property address 788 Central Ave. Again, pressure and proposal to complete,
Thank you very much. Dan Hertzberg from Hertzberg and Hertzberg. Nice to see all you again. I was here a while ago with the signs next door at the Kia signs. This is the same sign company that we represented before, Sign Studio Incorporated. They're the applicant, but the owner is still a company owned by James Morrell, who is the person that also owns the Kia. So they appear to be two adjoining facilities, and they are meant that way, but they are two separate entities for the purpose of operation. Even though there's a single parcel, 788 Central area, a single parcel that includes all of the area. There originally have been 10 smaller parcels, all combined to make this larger parcel. And you can see by where the red X is, or the red star is, that's the Leah Nissan. And all the parking area behind it is a part of that same parcel. The zoning is MUCH, all the light blue area is MUCH. Right in the middle of that. Next slide shows a 35-foot tall freestanding sign, the maximum permitted is 8 feet. To show the height of the freestanding signs, I presented, these are views from every road looking east. The first one is the 35-foot high sign. You can see it there in the distance. It's the white color. The existing sign is there, but it's hidden by the new sign. We do the next one over is a 20-foot high sign. I just took 20 feet to show you something in between. And that you can see the old sign behind it is taller than that. And the third one is an 8-foot high sign. It's the little red box that you see. The only thing left if you make 8 feet tall would be the top of the sign, because the rest of the sign goes away. We go to the next view as we get closer. Here we are from the parcel right next door. Sign is at 35 foot high. The middle one is at 20 feet high. And the third one is not the other, that's the old sign behind it. The new sign is the red square at the bottom, which is just the logo. Because the logo itself is actually 8 feet. And the view from heading from the east, if you're coming, you're about in front of where Dunkin' Donuts is now. Sign on the left is a 35-foot sign. Sign on the middle is a 20-foot high sign. And the square box is the 8-foot high sign. And next, to show you what the neighborhood has, you can see all of the tallest signs. Number one are higher, but all our freestanding signs are significantly higher than 8 feet. Westgate sign is significantly higher than 8 feet, and there, if you look up and down the street, there's a number of freestanding signs, all of them higher than 8 feet. Next. To show, the next, I can go back and talk about the other viewscapes, and I point to other places, but in order to compare comparison of the existing proposed freestanding sign to the proposed one, if you use the same theory that the entire support structure is part of the sign and you squared it up, the existing sign is 472.5 square feet. Our new sign is 377.22. That's because the old sign is 12.5 feet wide and our new sign is something less than that. So the sign we're replacing is actually smaller in area than the existing sign. But it matches the height. They're both 35 feet high. Measured from the bottom of the support structure. That's where the 30-foot high is measured from. Although maybe if you took out the support structure and everything, call it 34 foot 4 or something like that. There's like an 8-foot support on the bottom, which is technically not part of the sign, but we've always counted it as a single sign. So we throw it in there. I don't think it makes much difference in the quantity we have. Next, this is compliance with the character of the neighborhood. The 64 square feet is well exceeded. The ones on DePaula, the larger ones on DePaula are actually 12 by 12. They're 144 square feet apiece. The Armory Garage sign that changes text on it is about, I don't really know, this is an odd shape. The signboard itself is like 6 by 9. That's 54 foot on each side, and then there's the Armory on top of it, and I think the support would be part of the sign too. So I don't want to guess there, but it's something which well exceeds the 64 foot square feet. The next one I show the Westgate Shopping Center sign, which is on the Register of Historic Places. That's actually an historic monument in the city, the Westgate sign. So, and that's obviously larger than 64 square feet, and it's got the basic sign, and it also has the other signs for other stores within Westgate Center. Next, to allow 5 wall signs. Again, the existing Nissan has 4 signs on it. The 3 on the front and the 4th one is on the side facing north or facing west, the west side there. That sign's to be removed. So again, there are 3 on the front and 1 on the right-hand side of the building. Next, with character there, the DePaula Chevrolet and the Army Garage, there are definitely more than 1 sign, 1 wall signs on both. There are 5 signs if you count them all. So again, we're sort of matching them rather than 1 wall sign. I would hold that having car dealerships that have to not only tell them what they're selling, but what the name of the dealership is, and also some directional signs. 3 of our signs are directional signs that tells you where the service is, and then there's a sign over each store that says service. And those are very small signs, like 9 square feet apiece. They're not big, but they are counted as wall signs. But they're really are directional signs. So directional signs are defined in the code as being with directions with arrows and things like that. Yeah, but I think those are small enough on our side. Next. This is the sign that we need the variance for, one of the signs. This is Nissan sign, and those are dimensions of it. It's 53.62 square feet. The existing sign is replacing is 43.30 square feet. But there's another sign around the corner, which is 43.30 feet. So we're taking 86.6 square feet and replacing it with 53.62 square feet. I know that the code really doesn't say I'm allowed to compare it with the existing conditions, which you stand on yourself with new applications. But to compare it with what's there now gives you a good feel for how it's run and how people can find their way and how they can do it. I know know the fact is that they had a sign that was 400 some odd square feet, doesn't put us to do with the 100 square feet. We're on our own to try to convince you folks that it's necessary to provide the visibility for the signs. Next sign is, this is compare the active of the neighborhood. All those wall signs are greater than 32 square feet. The Hannaford sign is much bigger than 32 square feet. That's about 250 square feet, just the red Hannaford portion without the supermarket portion. So it's, you know, those are big buildings. They do have larger signs, and they're simply larger than 32 square feet. If we have, we're going to 53.62 square feet. Next, this is other signs that are large. You got the Meridian sign, which is like 170 square feet total. You got the auto sign, which is the AutoZone portion of it, is 100, about 100 square feet. If you want to go to the next one, the next sign we require variance for, and this one seems to be the greatest variance, but it's primarily because of the red background. You know, if we use cutout letters with the Nissan sign and put it on a building, it would be a compliant sign. But the way the logo works is that the logo is the red background. You see on the other sign we did, the red background is the key portion of the sign. To do the Nissan without the red background wouldn't reflect what the manufacturer wants here. We're guided primarily, and I set it out in my narrative reports. I copied on a couple of my copy the package that we got from them and what they wanted us to do. We actually eliminated one of the walls, one of the freestanding signs they wanted, and we replaced it. The second freestanding sign is strictly something that says electronic vehicles are sold there. So it's promotion for electronic vehicles. Every dealership is trying to have it. It's a second freestanding sign, but it's smaller than the requirements, but it's higher than 8 feet. So it's like 8 foot or 9 feet tall. But this one is, when you talk 110.22 square feet versus 32 square feet, we're actually for more than a 300% variance. We know that. The problem there is that when you take a look at the sign, I think the next one we go back, take a look at the sign there. What it does is it fills up the space from the top of the door to the top of the parapet. And that leaves that dimension, and the width is meant to match the door. So in the confines of looking correct with the frontage, we think it does. It doesn't, although it's 110 square feet, it reads smaller, and the red is the reason why it's 110 square feet. If you take a look on the left-hand side, that's where the service sign is. That's small, and there are 2 little service signs, which I don't think you can see over each door. We talked about the Nissan sign, and the destination sign qualifies it. It meets the size requirement. So we tried our best with our 5 proposed signs to do what we could. We ended up with Nissan slightly more, 53.60%, and the logo with 110.22 square feet, which is a significant variance. So we'll talk about that in a minute. The Meridian sign is greater than 110, Hannaford sign is greater than 110. I pulled them back, so I organized them where we had the original sign shown. We want to go in, I think, the next one we talk about the area variance. These are the 5 terminologies you're supposed to comply with. We're aware of that. And what I did is I took each one out and talked about each one through 5. Whether an undesirable change will reduce the character of the neighborhood or detriment to nearby properties created by granting the area variance. For each of the area variance, I don't think there's any detriment to neighborhood properties. We're fitting in with the streetscape of the whole bunch of area there. It used to be known as Autoway Zone or something like that. We used to call it. There were actually more dealers there than there are now. There were actually 2 or 3 more dealers on the strip there. we actually worked, I checked my files, we've actually worked for 8 original builders here and worked on one back in the first one who looked here was the 1950s. And that was the original Army Garage. We worked for that one too. And they all coexisted here. Now they're sort of changed by as the types of change occurred. But they always did have large freestanding signs and signs that exceeded 1 foot wall sign. Again, all these types of variances existed before. So we think it's consistent with the character of the neighborhood. We don't think it changed the character of the neighborhood. We think that, as I showed on my other photos, it's consistent with the neighborhood. Next is whether Venice so bad can be achieved by some other method feasible to the applicant to pursue other than an area variance. Well, like I said, if we did do an area variance, the freestanding sign would be the 8-foot tall logo, which would not serve the purpose of the freestanding sign. The freestanding sign is, when you think about it, people that are tuned in and they know where they're going, you don't need these signs at all. You just put a sign on your front door, say destination Nissan, and everybody's fine. But in reality, what the dealerships are trying to do is to attract people to see their place, look their direction, see some of the cars that are in front of the place and say, oh, maybe we'll stop there. So can the benefits of that be achieved by some other methods that doesn't require variance? We don't think it can be, because we'd be stuck with signs, one wall sign at 32 square feet, one freestanding sign at 8 feet tall, and not exceeding 64 square feet. And the wall signs, would be a lot smaller. So we think that they are necessary to give the visual identification. When we talk about the actual area variance we're asking for, I think we differ on that, whether or not asking to go to 110.22 square feet on the logo versus 52 square feet is difficult. But, I think that this sign is reasonably close. It's 170% of the ordered amount, but it's in keeping with what was there before. So again, I don't think there's a way for us to pursue this application other than requesting an area variance and actually a number of area variances. Next. Describe the potential alternatives that were considered the same. The benefit sought by the Nissan dealership is compliance with manufacturing requirements. And I said that all the time. Now, everybody says, so if we don't grant a variance, will the dealership close? The answer is no. They'll work there, they'll keep on working there. Will they be in trouble with the manufacturer? Manufacturers say you're in violation of your agreement. And I don't know what the financial implications are, whether or not a portion of one of the deals here is the manufacturer pays a portion of the sign package. Putting in a sign package like this is in excess of $100,000. Portion of that's paid by the manufacturer, and the majority of it's paid by the dealer. But it's probably 70-30 or something like that. I don't want to pull from the contract, but again, a significant portion is paid by the manufacturer. But meanwhile, if they didn't do it, well, they won't get the portion from the manufacturer. But not only that, it might challenge the agreement. These license agreements with the manufacturer come in 5-year periods. They only license you to work for them for 5 years. When the 5 years come down, and they're dissatisfied with how the dealer did sales, and everything else, and visibility of the place, they may not renew the manufacturer agreement. Have to go out and find another manufacturer. I'm not saying that's going to happen, but the alternative considered here, were either we get with smaller sign package, or we don't require any variance at all, in which case we have stuck with one wall sign, 8 foot high, a freestanding sign, and sign 32 square feet. Next. What the requested area is variance. Here we get into the question of substantial. when you talk about numbers, these numbers are certainly sound substantial. I won't argue with that. And there are numerical substantial deviation. But looking at some of these requirements individually, the height of freestanding at 8 feet, we're not out of public height. Identify the patient while going by at 30 miles per hour. It would, it wouldn't register on anybody's streetscape as a building. The number of signs numbers one per kind is not affected by any of the calculations along central revenue because they all want to identify their service area. They all want to have both the name of the dealership and the name of the car they're selling. So, yes, 5 times for the number of wall signs from 1 to 5 seems huge, but not compared to what's on other buildings. And likewise, from 8 feet tall to 35 feet tall, it's a big difference. But again, to get it to the level where it can be seen by the traffic public is necessary. Next, we don't think that any of the adverse impacts listed above or other adverse impacts would occur. It doesn't require any drainage, water use, sewer generation, odor, dust, traffic circulation, all the things that were normally in here talking about variances when we're going through a site plan. Those might come into effect, but for your signage, this is not a reasonable consideration. There are no adverse environmental impacts. And next, yes, this is self-created. It was actually demanded by the manufacturer on the dealer who was contracted bound to provide. He's required to update the signage legal pattern with our latest design standards out of the email, which I reproduced some of these. I think I have one more slide.
I think that's the end, but I did notice that area variance 152 was missing. Do you want me to pull up your project narrative that you submitted? It's for the second freestanding sign, the electric one. Do you want me to pull up the rendering and do you want to go over that a little bit?
Yeah,
Okay, I'm just gonna pull up the project narrative that was submitted.
it's out of my narrative report. It's an original method. There it is. That's the sign, second freestanding sign. It's small, it's thin. It's just meant to identify that electric vehicles are available. And the goal is to make people know that and buy an electric vehicle. It's I think it's part of New York State's goal to have all dealerships advertise that way, but it isn't. I can't hold New York State responsible for requiring us to put that sign in there. But again, they feel like that sign would make it apparent to the public that they're selling electric vehicles. So that's the second freestanding sign. We're only allowed one. The big one is a 35-foot tall one. This one's like 9'11" tall. I take my vision test.
Yeah, it's even smaller than that because it's almost 7 feet tall. That's the max 8 feet.
Okay. So this actually falls within the size requirements. What's the second freestanding? I'm ready to try to answer any questions.
We go to an image with the wall signs, please.
This one?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I recognize Nissan as a dealership name, or the company name. I recognize service, where you get service. What is destination?
Destination is the name of the deal.
So like others use their last name.
Yeah,
Okay.
call destination is what we call it. It's destination key and destination Nissan. If you watch any of those commercials, you used to have real places, like real trailers. We have cartoons of them. They always mention destination here, destination, this sound of there. So that's the identification. That one we kept it smaller, that's within the size. Sorry. As is the service sign, this little service signs over the doors. The Nissan sign is 53.62. That's out of the letters, even though there are letters pasted on the wall. So we counted them by letter size, they less than 32 square feet. But we took the outside limits of the sign, which is how it was presented to us when we made the application, and that should be the area of the sign. You know, and the one, I'll point out, the one that gives me no difficulty to make the case for is the size of the sun logo. I mean, the 53.62 square feet, if they figured that sign, we made it 43.3. You know, it wouldn't be much of a difference, but variance, but I think we could, you know, live with that. The logo sign is a tough one for us because it's a key element of the manufacturer wants it up front. They want it over the front door, lead the people to the front door of the place. And, you know, I think if that could be granted, we'd be very pleased.
So what's the dimensions of the existing signs for those two wall signs?
For the Nissan sign,
Yes, for the.
43.3 is the one on the front, and around the corner is 43.3. So both 43. They're identical signs. The one on the west side of the building is like.
But in the red one, there is a sign.
That's the one where that Nissan sign is. And primarily, when you change from the Nissan sign, if you go back and look at the existing document, previous, one slide back. That, you know, here we go. I'll go back. Here, no, that one. I want to. Yeah, okay. The existing Nissan sign actually look bigger because they're red and they pop out from the side of the place. Take a look at a proposed sign and the existing red Nissan sign. I think our sign actually stands out less than the original, even though that's measured at 43.3 square feet. The difference is noticeable, but I don't think it appears to overpower you regarding it being 53.62 versus 43.3. And you know, and because 32 is permitted, even the 43.3 would require variance. And you know, like I said before, we look at older signs. There's a different sign ordinance, but a lot of the sign limitations weren't much different than they are now. But variants were traditionally granted for, you know, all those, you know, I did represent DePaul, and DePaul got his signs approved. But, you know, those are huge signs. And there's 3 of them right in a row down Central Avenue. And again, we're competing with that to try to get some notice from the public. That's one of the reasons why these size limitations come into effect.
Is that original one, the original Nissan that's being pushed, the red logo?
That's
Is that a backer or no?
Now, the original one was embedded into the wall of the building and was a metal.
The one over the doorway.
No, it was actually just off the doorway. It's that little round thing. Now, quite honestly, it was over the door. That sign never was listed in the sign variation. They got the variance they got the first time. This was considered part of the building or something. So I don't know why. I looked and I couldn't find any original variance message. That's 36 square feet. So,
I'm sorry, but when was the previous sign?
the signs were originally, these were installed in 2013. Before, it was the old space. And he went through a variance to get these signs.
Just for point of clarification for council, Frank. Remember that. I know that the board has done like, because modified variances in the past, if the variance exists. Is that not an available route for this?
I don't know the history of that, receiving one. Well, I guess you were just saying that,
On the
that
Kia-
specifically.
Yeah, on the Kia signs, the decision was made, they approved 4 of the variances, and one of them, they said it's only approved with a smaller sign that matched the existing. So that was done when we got the Kia variances. They, we didn't have to reapply for it with a smaller size, and they determined that it was approved at a smaller size. But I don't see any reason, if there's a feeling here that you want to modify the size of it, you can approve it with, provided that it exceed a certain size. I think that can be done. I don't think there's my not on this. What's the lawyer correct?
Guess I would just say this staff comment here, but I think there is, a difference between the sign or lettering being what is taking up the majority of the square footage of the calculation, and then the same side, the background and the fact that it's red being added to the calculation. In other words, if it was red behind that current sun, then it'd almost be swapping the same thing.
Did I answer your question? Do you have another question, Martha?
No.
Okay, okay.
No, actually, I just was, this is very similar to what's there currently.
Yeah, that's why I showed the comparison with the additional one. I know that we can't rely on previous sign, which, exceeds the current need. But it makes it apparent that we're not trying to take advantage of adding a whole bunch of additional signs. The main signs we're adding to go to the 5, get to the 5 wall signs are the 3 service signs. This building didn't have service signs over any of the doors there because there was a different layout. And virtually every dealership up and down the block, when they have their garage doors facing the street, have a service sign over them, or some actually have service and something else, express service and express. So that they have little signs over to identify if you're coming for service, you're qualified for express service.
Or on this, on this, so on this, there's larger variant, the future red sign. Really, I think you're playing, and I just remember say that and get a little clarification on that, but like part of why that sign, which is the largest variant, the most substantial variant stuff tonight. The reason that it's set up the way it is, the large red factor, which is part of a big part of the importance of the sign, is to follow the width of the doors, like the entryway. So it's like aligned with the entryway, and then it's from the end of that door to the, and so like I guess I understand the width, like I guess it could. The backer could be made smaller, like in height.
Again, I think that's a sign that we have variation of. We could, if you take a look at the picture of the sign, if we took the bottom and we knocked off, I don't know, sign. If we knocked off, I don't know, 12 or 14 inches off the bottom, like in this sign alone, maybe a punt boots off the top and then raise it up to the top so we have a gap between that and the top of the door. We could probably, let's see, what's that? We got to get magnifying glasses, but it's.
Looks like 9 feet, 10 inches for width.
You want to
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. I'm Ron with the Sign Studio. All right. And I can probably talk more to the branding as opposed to this here. So when we look at the, I know there's a question about. There was a question about the branding. Around the Sign Studio.
No, I think it's part of the application.
Oh,
Or yeah, sign permit application.
He's the guy that I mentioned. Science, this is Science Studio in Broadway.
So when we look at the logo above the door, we consider the red portion an architectural element. No different than if you look at the sign that's currently there now. The red pillars that go up and then the Nissan above it. They weren't used in the regular calculation of the wall sign above, just the logo was. Now, if you look at that sign there on the wall, it mimics the roadside sign. But yet the roadside sign incorporated the architectural element of the red pillars. So for us to turn around and to put the red architectural element on the building and put the logo over it, we typically sometimes only want to take into calculation the logo itself, because it is a architectural element. And if we're looking at the logo above the door, it's approximately 45 square feet. Just the logo itself. So there it is, the logo there.
Yeah. And the dimension is 9 foot 10 inches wide total. And the depth is over 11 feet because it goes all the way down to the top of the door. It stops at the top of the parapet, goes all the way down.
Right. And this sign here has been played out in other municipalities in our area, town of Albany, and then also in which is Central Avenue, Schenectady. And they have that. So for this dealership to stand out differently from the others, it would probably cause a little problem with Nissan. It may even give the others, I don't say it's going to give the other dealerships like a competitive advantage because they've got, more modern, update and compliant branding. But again, we like to see Nissan consistent throughout all its dealerships. And I think if you compare Destination Kia to Destination Nissan, because these two came in at the same time. So basically, when we were looking at these two dealerships, we wanted to make sure that what we did with Destination Kia is what we did with Destination Nissan. Now, I happen to be the applicant for Destination Kia as well. So actually, these both came into me at the same time. And we said, I think we should bring it to the board relatively around the same time so that the board can compare them together. And then a determination was made later on to separate them. So the actual branding between the two was pretty consistent. Nissan and Kia working together to make sure that, one of them didn't dominate a letter size. For example, if you look at Nissan, it's relatively comparable to the destination letters height that's on Kia, but yet the destination wording on Nissan is significantly smaller than what's on Destination Kia. Destination Kia is close to 36 inches tall for a letter height. Well, just a little smaller because the board did ask that one sign be reduced a little bit, and we did bring it into compliance with the board.
And that one was primarily different because the font of the letters changed. And when you change the font of the letters, the spacing between them automatically is proportional. So that's why it ended up being a little bigger. We reduced it down and Ron was able to comply with that.
Right. And then we have the service sign, which on Kia is significantly larger than what's here for Nissan. So we kind of looked at the two and we kind of balanced them out so that when somebody went by, one of them wasn't going to stand out over the other. The Nissan logo on the red is relatively comparable to the Kia logo, which Kia logo is definitely a little bigger, but it's also on a black background that's consistent throughout the whole length of the building. So their background, which they choose to be black, was not added to the calculation of the logo, which would have probably put it over 1,000 square feet. So basically, we've always asked that, the red be considered part of the architectural element of the building, and then the logo on top of it.
Like he says, architectural.
This
This is the Latham.
Like,
Okay.
see it, like, makes way more sense when you see it that way. Yeah.
Oh, it bumps that?
Yes. And it's connected to the building, it's part of the structure of the building.
I think, I guess for the record, page just showed.
Wally's Nissan of Latham has this signage.
And I guess what it shows, right, is like that, the Nissan sign is a Nissan sign on top of an arch, bump out that is part of the building.
Architectural.
So it could be considered like the red, not part of the sign.
Right.
Just clarification, that would you still, would they still be looking to add that red element even if there was no sign there?
They would, consider it, but they probably won't allow it. No different than what was there now is the two red pillars going up at the entrance, which was not considered in branding, but yet you may consider it as branding. No different than if you were to look at Starbucks, which may have a green border going around the whole building, then they have the Starbucks sign sitting right on top of that border. Green border going around is not considered part of it, even though it is part of the branding colors. And McDonald's does the same thing as well now. They have a yellow banding going all the way around, and they'll put different information on top of that banding, maybe 14 inches high, but then the letters will stand up the top of it. And those colors are not incorporated into the square footage of signage.
Nope.
I'd like to make a motion. I move for a negative declaration under seeker for this project. It's project number 00531.
Second. So we can have you vote.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Motion for every difference. So I move that we approve area variance 152 to allow 2 freestanding signs where the maximum number permitted is 1 per street frontage.
Yes. Yeah. 3. 198.
I make a motion to approve area variance, number 153. And that is to allow for a 35-foot tall freestanding sign with maximum permitted is 8 feet.
Second. Yay.
Yeah.
Yes. After that, yes.
I move that we approve area variance 154 to allow for a 377.22 square foot freestanding sign where the maximum permitted is 64 square feet.
Second.
Yeah.
Yes.
What's that? Yes. After that, yes. Five. Any motion?
I move that we approve area variance 155 to allow for 5 wall signs where the maximum permitted is 1.
Second. Yes. Yes.
Yes.
After that, yes.
I'll make a motion and waive that
Six 16 square foot wall sign, and maximum limit is 32 square feet. Sorry, that,
Yes.
yes. Yes. Again, yes.
Move that we approve area variance 157 to allow for a 110.22 square foot wall sign where the maximum permitted is 32 square feet.
Second. Yes. Linda? Yes. Trina?
Yes.
Yes. Me? So just summarize, I expected all.
Right, thank you. This next part is a new procedure. Just have to, discuss the minutes, format, things you want to add, edit, so on and so forth. So Adriana, take it away.
Yes, the minutes of the meeting, the last meeting.
For May 10th.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Is there any edits to the minutes? Thank you. It's cool to see my last meeting. Yeah, with that, do we have a motion to approve the minutes? Meeting?
I move that we approve the minutes for the May 10, 2023 meeting.
No, second. Second. Thanks. Vote. Yes. Linda? Yes.
Yes.
Motion to adjourn. Second. Sabrina? Yes. Stage, yeah. All right.
All right, thank you.